It's in Hank Paulson's book, the former US Treasury, On the Brink. I'd refer the members to it. But our government, because a preferred close advisor had mooted the NAMA project, dug their heels in and continued along the path of there are no alternatives, which was a lie. And I say that advisedly. It became increasingly apparent as the information provided by the banks became less and less reliable as time went by, and even up to yesterday, or the day before yesterday, when Tranche 2 was announced, we saw again that the valuations were all wrong. And the government persisted that there was only one solution, that no alternatives had been offered, which is a lie, because I actually offered an alternative solution in print. It's a 10-page document. I have it here. And all the members of both houses got a copy in early October. And that document showed an outline of approach that should have been developed, should have been discussed, and wasn't. The shutters came down, and I was told by the department they were too busy to discuss anything else. What a shame. Here we are, a year later, no actual progress, no action plan in place. In fact, a NAMA business plan that was a discreditable document. I showed, and others supported me, other experts with experience supported, that the NAMA business plan contained an 18 billion error in its first submission. That has come to pass. The recent NAMA business plan is a reshuffling and a revision of figures and assumptions that bore no tenable relationship with reality. That is a shame for our country. And it's a shame that the banks, who can only stay open for business because of a state guarantee, which is all our households, underwriting all the activities of the banks, effectively, that those banks remain outside the direct control of the people providing that guarantee. That's actually conceptually absurd. It's totally absurd. And that we're being led to believe that last week before Easter, on Easter Tuesday, Mr. Lenihan announced that the government was going to be stern, strict and tough with the banks, and that the haircuts, a word I hate, was going to be far greater than had originally been included in the NAMA legislation, and the NAMA business plan was going to be higher on the first tranche and so on, and that the banks would be required to have capital of 7.4 billion, the two big ones, and 3.65 billion by the end of the year. That fell short. That's still not right. It's still wrong. And it's wrong that the people are being held out, exposed with that sort of information, that sort of untruth. In fact, last week I was away, but the PAC committee discussed the information that had been part of the decision-making towards the guarantee. And I think it was Deputy Morgan over there who described it very succinctly. And Deputy Noonan who added, what was the information and advice that the decision was actually taken on? That was a very good question. We're poised in Ireland in a situation, as I said, where there's a paralysis, lack of action, where NAMA can be reversed and should be reversed because they're only book entries, and the people making the decisions can still make those decisions under the correct structure, which is recapitalised banks, temporarily owned by the state, requiring accurate and full reporting quarterly about what they're doing in their ordinary business and in the business of loans, recoveries, realisations and workouts. To recap then, the legislation for NAMA was brought forward on a fraudulent basis. Because one further thing that I didn't mention yet was that the IMF team had been here, the International Monetary Fund team had been here in March 2009, before the April budget, and it was in the April budget that NAMA was announced. That team gave pointed advice to the department and the minister that a NAMA project, as was being formulated at the time, would not increase liquidity and credit to businesses and households, and that the loan losses at that point, in their estimation, would rise to 35 billion. Only 3 or 4 weeks later, the government brought forward the NAMA draft legislation, and it was on the basis that NAMA would clean up the bank's balance sheets, would increase liquidity and credit for businesses and households by providing immediate liquidity, and that loan losses by inference, when they brought out their figures, would be 23 billion, and that would, even within those figures, would produce a profit. We know now that that was absurd, and it was so absurd in its size and scale that, in retrospect, it was a fraudulent basis for bringing the legislation through the Dáil, through the Senate, and to the signature of Mrs. McAleese, President McAleese. That's very wrong. I actually telephoned Uachtaráin before that signature took place and said to Mr. Lachlan Quinn, who is a secretary to the President on economic and financial matters, please, please don't allow Mrs. McAleese sign that legislation, because people don't understand the implications of the error of it in its fundamental design. The Americans, I go back to it, saw that fundamental error design, not fit for purpose. And it's wrong of any government, no matter...
Mr. Mathews will go into question and answers
sure.
After giving your...
I think 2 minutes should, 2 minutes should wrap it up.
Yeah.
The key points to remember are NAMA is a fraud and can't work and can be reversed. The capitalisation of our main banks should be at a far greater level immediately, resulting in control by the state for a temporary period of maybe up to 5 years. And that will allow the economy to recover through asset price and rental price corrections. And experts in many areas will support that view. Even today, as you know, the ESRI's John Fitzgerald said, yes, now it becomes apparent that the banks need to be stuffed with capital to do their jobs, and they need to be nationalised. Isn't it amazing that firms with brand international names that were themselves going broke 10 days before they were sought for advice? It's like asking somebody on a life support machine for advice about your own imminent demise. It's extraordinary. But we've paid 7.3 million in fees. And there were home experts who were non-compromised, non-aligned to any parties, independent, truthfully, who could do the analysis and were told by the department, sorry, we're too busy to discuss anything. That, I think, is an extraordinary, shameful situation. And as the McGill Summer School sits today and for the rest of the week talking about reform, the new Ireland and all the rest, we should look at our institutions. Of course we should clean out. When I say clean out, ask all the existing board members of banks who were there prior to 2008, please resign. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing. You didn't understand your businesses. And the same with other areas of responsibility and regulation. So, as I said, we can recapitalise our banks correctly. AIB 10 billion, Bank of Ireland 6.5 billion, EBS 1 billion. That's the right thing, and we'll get that money back. Close Anglo, close Irish Nationwide, and we will save the state 17.5 billion minimally. Minimally. And all the figures, you can ask me for the details and the constructions, they're there. And anybody in the public can ask me too. And they're independent, and they're verifiable, and they come from the best information available, and the best experience, the experience that knows these markets. And lastly, it's not good enough that people say, but sure, we are where we are, and NAMA continues. No. It can be reversed. They're only book entries. There's only about 80 people who've taken up posts in NAMA. They can all actually join bank recoveries divisions under the correct structure and the correct capitalisation of the banks. And we can save our country about a 5 or 6 year demise of a torpor which has already occurred. There's a paralysis from the big loans to the small loans. And how do I know? Because I talk to the people who've borrowed.
We'll move into question and answers.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for your time.
Okay, thanks for your presentation.